everyone. Welcome to the Next Best Picture podcast, where I am being joined right now by the director and writer of Death of a Unicorn, Alex Scharfman. Alex, thank you so much for taking the time, man. I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, hello. Good to see you. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for wanting to talk about this movie.
Absolutely, man. Well, thank you so much. I saw this movie at the South by Southwest Film Festival where the crowd just seemed to eat it up. We all had such a blast watching it. I'm curious to know because it's such a high concept, unusual premise for a film. Where did the idea come from? Like, because it's not every day that you just pull this necessarily out of your head.
No, it was an idea that I had a long time ago, and the idea was just the opening scene, basically of a father and daughter driving through the woods. And I didn't know where they were going or what they were doing, but I knew they were talking about something relatively banal and grounded. And then out of nowhere, boom, they just hit a unicorn. And that was an idea I had. And at first, I was like, I guess that's a short film, but like I don't know what to do with that because it's an expensive short film. And I wasn't really interested in making a short film. So I didn't do anything with it. And then I don't know. It kept kind of, it kept kind of gnawing at me in the back of my mind. I like to, with a lot of ideas, I like to try and like put them away for as long as I can and let them kind of build up and accumulate their own feeling. And I had no interest in unicorns. Like I was not like a unicorn kid growing up. I had no like emotional attachment to them. And so when I had that idea, I was like, at first, I was like, does it have to be a unicorn? What if it's Bigfoot or what if it's, just anything else? And I was like, it kept coming back to it had to be a unicorn. And then that led me to a lot of unicorn research, trying to think about like, well, what is a unicorn? What does it symbolize? What do we all bring to what a unicorn is? And then it kind of, I don't know. My favorite ideas are the ones where I just start pulling a thread and I don't know where it's going. But that then led me to, unicorn research led to a lot of medieval lore, which led to, unicorns being prized throughout history as a panacea, which then led to the tapestries eventually. And then at some point, I kind of realized it was a way to make a fun kind of creature feature in the vein of so many movies that made me fall in love with film and filmmaking when I was a young person. And so that's when I was like, it all kind of coalesced. That was kind of the last piece of the puzzle to fall together, where I was like, oh, that's something I want to explore, and kind of dove into it further.
What were some of those films that you were thinking of when you said when you were a kid?
Oh man, I mean, it's so many of the movies of like Spielberg and Cameron and Carpenter and Ridley Scott, Aliens, The Thing, The Abyss is one that I love that I feel
Yeah.
like is often not it like shares all of that same DNA with so many of those movies. I don't know. I mean, there's certainly a bit of E.T. in here. Ridley Scott's Legend is a movie I love and have a great fondness for. And obviously that's like, I don't know. I think we haven't had too many unicorns in movies. That's kind of the seminal unicorn movies like that and The Last Unicorn. But yeah, I think there's a lot of these kind of, adventure creature features that really have like a rich history when you go back to like the creature from the Black Lagoon, Val Guest's The Abominable Snowman. Like there's such a rich history to just keep going back on. I don't know, that was it sort of was my way in, but really certainly a nod to those kind of creature movies from like the late 70s. Jaws, geez, how did I forget Jaws? Close Encounters. Yeah, those kind of movies from the late 70s through the early 90s, but I feel like we kind of stopped making them.
Yeah, no, it's true. So those are like the films that you watch that, one gets inspired by, but you've also worked on a producer on a number of projects, collaborated with so many filmmakers. It's clear that this was building towards your feature directorial debut. I know you made a short before this as well that you co-directed as well, but I'm curious to know like who was the person outside of the films that they made that like gave you the best advice and the best motivation to push you forward and say, yes, it's your time to direct?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't know. It sort of was a natural evolution. I hadn't directed a short film since I was in college, really.
Hmm.
But I kind of naturally I got into producing through writing, and then producing kind of became my main focus. And then for the past several years, I've been working as a screenwriter as well as a producer. Just none of the things I've been working on have gotten made. So I don't know. It's tough. There's certainly filmmakers I've spoken to in the process of like arriving at the conclusion that it was time for me to start stepping into the directing chair. But I don't know if I necessarily should divulge who. But there was one mentor who was pretty clearly like, okay, you need to do this as the next step of your what you're up to. Which was something I was kind of resistant to for a long time because I just have such reverence for the director as like a job that needs to hold it all together. And I think at the start of my career, when I was, coming up as a producer more, or even, in the mid of my career when I was really started working as a screenwriter more, I don't think I was ready to step into that chair. And I think I, gained a lot of experience from all the filmmakers I worked with. I learned a lot from them.
Yeah.
Uh, and just getting to work on a lot of movies in a lot of different capacities. I started as a PA. I'd like managed locations. I've production managed. I've done so many different things on set, and I think it was all cumulative and additive towards getting to a place of being like, okay, it's time for me to direct something.
Well, you didn't make it easy on yourself because you're dealing a lot with practical and visual effects blending together here to create something that does not exist in our real world. And I'm curious to know, like, which project that you previously either produced or just worked on gave you enough of a blueprint to say, okay, I can tackle this. And if not, what were the challenges that you still faced anyway in trying to bring a unicorn to life on the screen like this?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could say that there was a movie I worked on that was like, oh, great, we'll do that. I didn't. In working on so many on film sets, I feel very comfortable with the apparatus of a film set, like as a workplace. It's a really weird, specific environment, but I enjoy it as a place to like problem solve and be creative and collaborate with people. I think in terms of like the specific challenges of puppets and like gore and things like that. Like, I did a movie called Resurrection that had some really fun.
Love that movie so much.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm very proud of that one. That was
Yeah.
great. Anti-Human's Resurrection is a movie that I hold with a lot of fondness and like loved making. And Andrew's an incredible filmmaker. But we had like a good amount of gore and special effects and things like that. I've also just been on sets with a lot of that stuff over the years, and I always find I don't know. That's the stuff that makes movies escapist to me is like whenever you can do stunts and practical effects and prosthetics and things like that. And that's sort of one of those things that is again, it's working in movies is such a weird thing, but that's like really where it feels fun and you get to really go to full escapist levels. So I don't know. I always had a fondness for doing those sorts of things, but then, like I said, the movies of my youth, like that I watched when I was in my, late teens, early 20s, and made me fall in love with filmmaking. So much of it was like watching the featurettes of like the making of Aliens, like that
Yeah.
3 hour, it's like I've watched that countless times when I was a young person. And I think it's like you watch those enough, you read Cinefex enough, and you know how a movie works, and you do a certain things on your own. And then the number one thing is prep. You just plan and plan and plan. So that was sort of the kind of the cocktail for it. I had a lot of friends who worked on the movie Beast of the Southern Wild, and
Mm.
that was an interesting one of like, okay, you could do creatures if you plan it enough in a down and dirty kind of way. I think this is obviously a very different movie than that. We have a lot more VFX kind of tied into our practical effects, but I don't know. It's kind of a cocktail of all of these things that sort of was like it was a jump certainly to want to direct something with this many technical challenges, but I don't know. That was also the fun of it. That was kind of part of the exciting thing of like, well, if someone wants to let me make it something like this, I should just give it a shot and see what happens.
Yeah. As we're talking about like influences and also like work that leads up to being able to tackle these challenges on set, you know, you have this brilliant cast here who are so gifted at comedy. But the thing that surprised me, I expected a comedy coming in. I expected gruesome kills. What I didn't expect and what I walked away with and what resonated with me the most was this moving father-daughter story at the center of it all and how invested I became in Paul Rudd and Jenna Ortega's central relationship here throughout this film. Where in the developmental process did that come in? Was that always there from the very beginning, or did that take time to come to the forefront?
It was always something. It was always something I wanted to have in the movie, and it felt like it was organic to the movie. I think, um, in my own process when I'm outlining an idea, I like kind of try to explore a lot of different shapes of an idea to try and figure out like what's the right one.
Hmm.
And there were versions where I was like, okay, it's a unicorn horror movie. And there were versions where it wasn't a comedy, and I was like, no, it's inherently absurd. You have to have comedy in it, otherwise that's weird. And you just sort of, yeah, I don't think you do a straight-faced unicorn movie. And there were versions that were, horror comedies that were more cynical, I would say,
Mm.
um, that I thought about and I kind of did thought experiments of. And it kind of never really fit or made sense to me just because I think um, there's something to unicorns that we bring an emotional connection to them. They're not just another monster. They're not something, and I think if you treated it as if it were, just this kind of killing machine, then you'd kind of be denying a lot of the emotional baggage, which is in a positive way, the baggage that we all bring to unicorns, the associations that we have, and kind of what they mean. You'd be making a monster movie with a unicorn, but not necessarily about a unicorn, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Hmm.
So the emotional through line was always something that I felt very important to me, especially because, I think the movie was a great debt to some of the films of Steven Spielberg. And there's always that kind of sense of wonder and awe and has an emotional through line, like in E.T., for example. Like, I think when my editor first read the script, he was like, it's E.T. if it was a horror movie, which I was like, well, that's a pretty good way to describe it. But I think there's something to that. But then you look at other movies like The Host. The Host is a Bong Joon-ho's The Host is
Yeah.
like one of my favorite creature movies. I love that movie, but at the center of it, it's got all these different things, but at the center of it is this father-daughter story. And so, with this movie, I always wanted the unicorn. I felt important to me that there was an emotional through line. I felt like the right expression of the idea, that there was a center to it so that it was something with a positive value structure and a certain idea that I was trying to express about that connects to our feelings about unicorns. It connects to this ineffable kind of quality that they have that is emotional at its heart.
Yeah. As we get to the end here, I'm going to ask you three quick questions for three quick answers. Favorite death scene?
Uh, Téa Leoni, Téa Leoni's death scene is probably my favorite.
Cast member most likely to make everyone else on set laugh?
Anthony Carrigan.
Yeah, I gotta say, you've obviously seen many different versions of this through the editing process. You wrote it, you've lived with it for so long. Which line delivery still makes you laugh the most?
Oh gosh. Line delivery that makes me laugh the most. Who? Oh wow, I don't have a good quick answer. I mean, Taya saying that horn was rather girthsome is pretty great to me. I'll say that.
That was a good one. Definitely a good one.
Yeah.
Challenge you most want to tackle next?
I don't know. I think the thing that I'm interested in tackling next, is just continuing to tell original stories.
Hmm.
I think it was my hope with this movie was to, make my own version as a love letter to some of the movies that I grew up with and that really had felt positive to me and felt like big and theatrical and escapist and fun in a popcorn kind of way, but still had an intelligence to them. Um, and so I don't know. My hope is to keep making original movies that obviously bear influences that I love, but that feel like we haven't been making lately.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
So whatever script you can drop on the desk and make them go, wait, what is this exactly? What are you pitching to us? It's all for the better. Whatever it is you end up doing next, I look forward to it. I'm sure audiences, once they see this, will also look forward to it. Thank you so much for the time here, Alex. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it.
Take care.
Be well.